Didn't scream. I didn't even flinch. Everyone in the boardroom froze, as if someone had pressed pause on reality. The dripping of coffee onto the expensive conference table was the only sound. "You're nothing but a worthless assistant," Garrison bellowed, his face inches from mine as spittle flew from his lips. "How dare you contradict me in front of the board? You take notes. You bring coffee. You don't speak unless spoken to." 12 pairs of wide eyes watched from around the table. Some looked horrified, others embarrassed, but none spoke up. None moved to help me as I sat there, scalded and humiliated. I slowly reached for a napkin and dabbed at the brown liquid soaking into my clothes. 3 years of careful planning had prepared me for moments like this. I just hadn't expected such a public display of his true nature. I stood up. "Actually," I said, my voice calm despite the burning on my skin, "I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." I reached for my phone, unlocked it, and held it up. "But before I continue, you should know that everything happening in this room has been recorded for the past 3 years. The color drained from Garrison's face as I turned to address the board. "Gentlemen, ladies, I believe it's time we had an honest conversation about the future of this company. Before I continue my story, I want to thank everyone who's been supporting this channel. If you're finding yourself glued to this story, please hit that like button and subscribe. It lets me know you want more content like this, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, back to that boardroom where my life was about to change forever. My name is Eleanor Merritt, though everyone at Horizon Technologies called me Ellie. I was 32 years old when the coffee incident happened, with degrees in business and computer science that no one at the company knew about. I'm naturally observant, patient to a fault, and have a memory that borders on photographic all qualities that made me exceptional at my job and terrible at letting go of grudges. I hadn't always planned to work as an executive assistant. My dream was to launch my own tech company focused on sustainable energy solutions. But fresh out of my undergraduate program with student loans looming, I needed steady income while I developed my ideas and saved startup capital. Horizon Technologies was a mid-sized firm specializing in energy management systems when I joined. The company had brilliant engineers but suffered from short-sighted leadership. I saw the potential immediately and thought I might learn something valuable before pursuing my own venture. Then I met Garrison Reed. As the CEO, Garrison had a reputation for being demanding. What people didn't say out loud was that he was also vindictive, manipulative, and took credit for others' work. He'd inherited the company from his father but told everyone he'd built it from nothing. I became his assistant through an internal promotion after his previous assistant quit without notice. Later, I learned she'd filed a harassment complaint that was buried by HR. "You're lucky to have this opportunity," the HR director told me with a plastic smile. "Many would kill for direct access to Mr. Reed." During my first week, Garrison called me into his office and made things clear. "I don't need you to think. I need you to do what I say, when I say it, how I say it. Can you handle that?" I nodded and played my part perfectly. The eager assistant, grateful for the opportunity, willing to learn. Inside, I was already calculating how to use this position to my advantage. For 3 years, I was the first to arrive and last to leave. I handled Garrison's schedule, his correspondence, his lunch orders, his gift selections for his wife and his girlfriends. I took notes in every meeting, organized his files, and became invisible in the way that only assistants can. Present, but unseen. Heard, but not listened to. What Garrison never realized was that I was listening to everything, learning everything. I understood the company's operations better than anyone because I saw all the moving parts. I knew which clients were unhappy, which employees were mistreated, which innovations were ignored because they didn't originate with Garrison. And I was planning. By day, I was the perfect assistant. By night, I was completing my master's degree in business administration and building connections with the very people Garrison had alienated. The first was Vivian Ortega, the former CFO. Garrison had fired her after she questioned some accounting practices that skirted ethical boundaries. I reached out to her 6 months after her departure, claiming I needed advice on my graduate thesis. Over coffee, I showed her my business plan. You've identified gaps in the market that Horizon could fill but won't, she said, impressed. Why are you still working there? I'm gathering resources, I replied honestly, and there's still more I need to learn. Vivian leaned forward. What if you had funding to start now? That conversation led to many more. Vivian introduced me to investors who were interested in green energy solutions. With her financial expertise and my technical knowledge, we began building the foundation of a company that would compete directly with Horizon, but with a business model focused on sustainability and collaboration rather than short-term profits. Next came Rajan Patel, Horizon's brilliant lead engineer who quit after Garrison took credit for his revolutionary energy storage design. I found him teaching at the local university. I remember you, he said when I approached him after class. You were always kind, even when your boss was being impossible. I'm still his assistant, I admitted, but I'm working on something I think you'd find interesting. One by one, I connected with former Horizon employees who had left because of Garrison's toxic leadership. 6 key team members eventually joined what we called Project Phoenix, our company that would rise from the ashes of their broken careers at Horizon. We worked in secret for over a year. I continued performing my duties flawlessly at Horizon while building our competitor after hours. The double life was exhausting, but every time Garrison belittled me or took credit for my work, it fueled my determination. Then came a critical turning point. Garrison was invited to speak at the annual Energy Innovation Conference, but had a scheduling conflict with his son's graduation. Rather than miss the conference, he sent me to take notes, not as a participant, but essentially as his courier. Just get the materials and information, he instructed. I need to know what our competitors are planning. What he didn't know was that I had already arranged meetings with 3 of Horizon's biggest clients who would be attending the conference. Clients who had expressed frustration with Horizon's outdated approaches and lack of customer service. The first was Westbrook Industries, responsible for 22% of Horizon's annual revenue. Eleanor, said Diane Westbrook, the CEO, I was surprised to get your email. Does Garrison know you're meeting with me? Mr. Reed sent me to gather information, I said carefully. I'm gathering what I believe is most valuable. Over the next hour, I listened to her complaints about Horizon. Then I showed her what Phoenix Energy could offer instead. By the end of our meeting, she was interested. This is impressive work, she admitted, but leaving an established company for a startup is risky. That's why we're offering a phased transition with guaranteed benchmarks, I explained. And our team includes the very people who created the technology you already trust at Horizon. Similar conversations with Global NRG and TerraSmart followed. By the end of the conference, I had tentative commitments from clients representing nearly 2/3 of Horizon's business. When I returned, I gave Garrison exactly what he expected, a report on competitors' presentations and new products. I also recorded his dismissive response. This is useless, he scoffed, tossing my carefully prepared report aside. Next time I'll send someone who can actually understand what matters. I smiled and nodded, knowing that what really mattered was already in motion. The weeks that followed were intense. Vivian secured our final round of funding. Rajan finalized our product designs. Legal prepared the client contracts. We leased office space across town. Everything was ready. We just needed the right moment for me to make my exit from Horizon. Garrison unknowingly provided the perfect opportunity when he scheduled a board meeting to discuss the coming year's strategy. He asked me to prepare a presentation on client retention, a topic he knew little about but wanted to appear knowledgeable on. I spent days creating a comprehensive analysis showing alarming trends in client satisfaction and identifying specific improvements needed to prevent client loss. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was giving Horizon one last chance to address the very issues that would soon cost them most of their business. The morning of the board meeting, I dressed with particular care in a crisp white blouse and charcoal pencil skirt. I wore my grandmother's pearl earrings for courage. I carried a small recorder in my pocket, though the recording feature on my phone was also activated, redundancy being a lesson Horizon had taught me well. The meeting began with Garrison taking credit for my presentation, as expected. Then he opened the floor for questions. That's when Bernard Chen, the newest board member, asked the question that changed everything. These client satisfaction numbers are concerning. What specific steps are being taken to address their complaints? Before Garrison could answer with the talking points I'd prepared for him, I spoke up. If I may, Mr. Chen, I've included a detailed action plan on page 17 that addresses each area of concern. The room went silent. I had broken the cardinal rule. I had spoken without being asked directly. And worse, I had implied that I, not Garrison, had prepared the report. Garrison's face flushed crimson. Ellie is getting ahead of herself, he said with a tight smile. Those are the recommendations I've developed based on my conversations with key clients. Actually, I continued, my heart pounding but my voice steady. Those recommendations come from data I've gathered over the past year through client surveys and exit interviews. I turned to the page in question. You'll note that our 3 largest clients have all expressed similar concerns about outdated technology and poor response times. The plan I've outlined would address. That's when it happened. Garrison grabbed his coffee mug and threw the contents directly at me. The hot liquid splashed across my face and chest, soaking through my white blouse. You're nothing but a worthless assistant, he shouted. How dare you contradict me in front of the board? You take notes. You bring coffee. You don't speak unless spoken to. And there we were, back at the moment that would define everything that followed. I stood up, dabbed at my soaked blouse, and pulled out my phone. Actually, I said calmly, I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. I turned to address the board members, whose expressions ranged from shock to embarrassment to curiosity. For 3 years, I've worked as Mr. Reed's assistant while completing my MBA and a second master's in sustainable energy at night. During that time, I've identified 17 critical flaws in Horizon's business model that Mr. Reed has consistently ignored or dismissed. Garrison laughed, though it sounded hollow. Sit down before you embarrass yourself further, Ellie. I ignored him and continued. Last month, when Mr. Reed sent me to the Energy Innovation Conference, not as a participant but to carry his materials, I met with representatives from Westbrook Industries, Global NRG, and TerraSmart. The board chairman, Harold Morris, leaned forward. Our 3 largest clients? Why would they meet with an assistant? Because they've been trying to communicate their needs to Horizon for years, without success, I explained, and they've all now agreed to switch their contracts to my new venture. Garrison's face contorted with rage. What are you talking about? What venture? I smiled. The venture that's backed by Vivian Ortega, the CFO you fired last year when she tried to warn you about accounting irregularities. The venture that employs Rajan Patel and the 5 other team members you drove away with your bullying and credit stealing. I reached into my bag and placed a business card in front of each board member. Simple, elegant, with the Phoenix Energy logo and my name. Eleanor Merritt, founder and CEO. I didn't steal anything from Horizon, I clarified. I simply created something better. And I'm here today not just to resign, but to offer this company a chance to become our subsidiary before your stock plummets tomorrow when our launch and the client transitions are announced publicly. Garrison lunged toward me, but Bernard Chen and another board member grabbed his arms. You think anyone would choose you over me? He spat, struggling against their grip. They already have, I replied evenly. 64% of your clients have signed with us, effective immediately. The tension in the room was palpable as the implications sank in. Harold Morris wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. Why tell us this? He asked. Why not just leave and let us find out when it's too late? I looked around the table. Because unlike Mr. Reed, I believe in giving people chances. There are talented individuals at this company who deserve better leadership. My offer gives Horizon a path forward, instead of inevitable bankruptcy. I walked toward the door, then turned back to Garrison, who had collapsed into his chair, his face ashen. You have until tomorrow morning to accept my offer. After that, we become your biggest competitor with your client base already in our pocket. I gestured to my stained blouse. Oh, and I'll be sending you the cleaning bill for this. Consider it the first invoice of many. As I closed the door behind me, I heard the eruption of panicked voices. Through the glass, I saw their faces, white with shock at the realization that the worthless assistant they'd underestimated had just become the most powerful person in the room. 3 years of being invisible had made me invincible. But my story doesn't end with that dramatic exit. The real challenge was just beginning. As I walked through the office for the last time, employees stared at my coffee-stained blouse with confusion. My assistant, Zora, yes, I had secretly hired my own assistant 2 months earlier, was waiting at my desk with a change of clothes. "How did it go?" she whispered as she handed me a garment bag. "Exactly as planned," I replied. "Call the team. It's happening." Within an hour, I was standing in the new Phoenix Energy headquarters, addressing the core team that had been working in secret for months. Vivian, Rajan, and 19 others looked at me with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. "It's done," I announced. "Horizon has until morning to accept our offer, but regardless of their decision, we launch tomorrow." Rajan clapped his hands together. "At last. No more pretending our company doesn't exist." Vivian was more practical. "What was the board's reaction? Do you think they'll take the deal?" I considered this as I changed into a fresh blouse in the adjoining room. They were stunned. Garrison was furious, but Harold Morris seemed open to discussion. He's a pragmatist. He'll do whatever saves the company and his reputation. The next 12 hours were a whirlwind of activity. Our PR team finalized press releases. Legal reviewed contracts one last time. IT prepared to take our website public. By midnight, we were ready for either outcome, Horizon's surrender, or our full-scale launch as their competitor. I barely slept that night, not from anxiety, but from anticipation. 3 years of planning, of swallowing my pride, of documenting every misstep and missed opportunity at Horizon. It was all culminating in this moment. At 7:30 the next morning, my phone rang. Harold Morris. "Eleanor," he said, his voice weary. "The board has been in emergency session all night." "And?" I kept my voice neutral. "We need more time to consider your proposal." I had anticipated this. The terms were clear, Mr. Morris. Deadline is 8 a.m. "Garrison has been removed as CEO, effective immediately," he said quickly. "We're prepared to discuss a merger of equals rather than becoming a subsidiary." This was interesting, but not enough. That wasn't the offer. "Please," he said, and I heard genuine desperation in his voice. "We have shareholders to consider, employees who had nothing to do with how you were treated." I let silence hang for a moment before responding. "I'll give you until noon, not as a courtesy to the board, but out of respect for the employees who deserve better than what Horizon has given them." I ended the call and turned to Vivian, who had been listening nearby. "4 more hours," I told her, "but proceed with the announcements as planned. They need to understand we're not bluffing." At 9 a.m., our press release went out, announcing the formation of Phoenix Energy and our partnerships with major clients formerly aligned with Horizon. The industry news sites picked it up immediately. By 10 a.m., Horizon's stock had dropped 18%. At 11:30, Harold called again. "We accept your original terms," he said, defeated. "Horizon will become a subsidiary of Phoenix Energy." I allowed myself a small smile. "Have the paperwork ready by 2 p.m. I'll bring my team to your offices to sign." The return to Horizon that afternoon was nothing like my exit the day before. The reception area was hushed as I walked in with Vivian, our legal counsel, and 2 board members from our side. Employees watched from doorways and cubicles, whispering among themselves. In the same boardroom where Garrison had thrown coffee at me, Harold Morris and the remaining Horizon board members waited. Garrison was notably absent. "Where is Mr. Reed?" I asked as we took our seats. Harold cleared his throat. "He resigned this morning, with immediate effect." I nodded, unsurprised. "Then let's proceed." The signing took less than 30 minutes. Ownership of Horizon Technologies transferred to Phoenix Energy. The subsidiary would continue operations under new management, with a phased integration plan to minimize disruption. As we concluded, Harold asked to speak with me privately. The others filed out, leaving us alone in the boardroom. "I owe you an apology," he said once the door closed. "I saw how Garrison treated you and others. I did nothing." I studied him for a moment. "Why not?" He sighed heavily. "Complacency. Conflict avoidance. The quarterly numbers were good enough that I could justify not rocking the boat." "Those aren't reasons," I replied. "They're excuses." Yes, he agreed. And now I've lost my company because of them. I considered him carefully. Harold was in his 60s, with decades of industry experience and connections that could still be valuable. You haven't lost anything yet, I told him. You've just acquired new leadership. Whether you still have a place here depends on what you do next. He looked surprised. You're not firing the entire board? I'm evaluating everyone based on merit and potential contribution, not past mistakes. I stood up. Send me a proposal for how you think you can add value to Phoenix Energy going forward. I'll review it like any other business proposal. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Eleanor, how did you do it? How did you work for him for 3 years without letting on what you were planning? I paused at the door. I learned something valuable from my time here, Mr. Morris. People see what they expect to see. Garrison expected to see a grateful, subservient assistant, so that's what I showed him. He never looked deeper because he never believed I could be more than what he defined me as. And now you own his company, Harold said with a hint of admiration. No, I corrected him. I built my own company. Horizon is just an acquisition. In the weeks that followed, we implemented our integration plan. I made a point of personally meeting with every Horizon employee to explain the changes and opportunities ahead. Many were understandably nervous, but others were visibly relieved to be free of Garrison's leadership. Is it true what they're saying? Asked one engineer during a department meeting. That you recorded everything while you were his assistant? Not everything, I clarified. Just the important parts. The room erupted in nervous laughter. The transition wasn't without challenges. 2 of Garrison's loyal executives resigned rather than work under my leadership. A few clients who hadn't been part of our initial outreach expressed concerns about the sudden change. But our preparation proved sufficient. We had contingency plans for every scenario. A month after the acquisition, I received an unexpected email from Garrison. The subject line read simply, "We should talk." Against Vivian's advice, I agreed to meet him at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant downtown. I arrived early and watched him enter. He'd lost weight, and the arrogance in his walk was diminished. Eleanor, he greeted me, trying for his old authoritative tone but falling short. Thank you for meeting me. What can I do for you, Garrison? I asked once he was seated. He studied me for a moment. I underestimated you. Clearly. Yes, I agreed. You did. I want to understand something, he continued. Was it always your plan to take over Horizon? From the beginning? I considered the question carefully. No. Initially, I just wanted to learn the industry while developing my own ideas. But the more I saw how you operated, taking credit for others' work, ignoring valuable input, driving away talented people, the more I realized there was an opportunity to build something better. Using my clients, he said bitterly. Using relationships I built while you were too busy taking them for granted. I corrected. Every client who switched to Phoenix had tried to communicate their needs to you first. You didn't listen. He leaned forward. I want to make you an offer. This was unexpected. What kind of offer? I'm starting a new venture, he said. With my experience and your tactical approach, we could build something significant. I couldn't help but laugh. You're offering me a job after calling me worthless? His expression hardened. I'm offering you a partnership, equal stakes. I studied him, trying to understand his angle. Why would I consider working with you when I've already succeeded without you? Because I still have connections you don't, he replied, and resources you might find valuable. I took a sip of water, letting him wait for my response. Garrison, do you know why I recorded our interactions for 3 years? He frowned. Leverage, obviously. Protection, I corrected. I needed evidence of how you operated because I knew that someone like you would never accept defeat gracefully. You'd look for ways to retaliate, to reclaim what you lost, to prove you were still in control. His expression confirmed my suspicions. This meeting isn't about partnership, I continued. It's about you trying to find a way back in to undermine what I've built. And that's never going to happen. I stood up. Enjoy your meal, it's been paid for. As I walked away, he called after me. You think you've won, but this isn't over, Eleanor. I turned back. Actually, it was over the moment you decided I was worthless. You just didn't know it yet. 6 months after the acquisition, Phoenix Energy was flourishing. We'd retained 92% of Horizon's valuable employees while creating a healthier work culture. Our client base had expanded beyond the energy sector into broader sustainability initiatives. Rajan's innovations were receiving industry recognition, and Vivian had streamlined our operations into a model of efficiency. I rarely thought about Garrison until Zora rushed into my office one afternoon. "You need to see this," she said, handing me her tablet. It was an industry news site announcing Garrison's new company, Reed Innovations, with a focus suspiciously similar to Phoenix Energy's core business. The article quoted him directly. "I'm returning to the industry with insights gained from watching others attempt to fill the void left by my departure from Horizon." I handed the tablet back to Zora. "Monitor this, but it's not a concern." "He's clearly targeting us," she pointed out. "Yes," I agreed. "And he'll fail because he still hasn't learned the right lesson." A week later, I received another email from Garrison. This one contained only a news release draft announcing that Reed Innovations had secured funding from a major investment group known for hostile takeovers. I forwarded it to Vivian with a brief note: "Activate Contingency Plan Delta." Within hours, our legal team had filed preemptive protective measures for our intellectual property. Our PR department reached out to key industry journalists to highlight our upcoming innovations. And I personally called each of our major clients to reinforce our partnerships. 2 days later, I held a company-wide meeting. "Some of you may have heard that Garrison Reed is attempting to re-enter our market space," I began. "I want to address this directly because transparency is one of our core values." The room was silent, everyone's attention focused intently. Garrison believes that business is about power and domination. His new venture is built on the same principles that led to Horizon's vulnerability, prioritizing ego over innovation, competition over collaboration, and profit over purpose. I clicked to the next slide, showing our growth metrics since the acquisition. Phoenix Energy exists because we believe there's a better way. We've proven that treating people with respect, listening to clients' needs, and focusing on sustainable solutions creates more value than the old model ever could. I looked around at the faces watching me, people who had chosen to be part of something new, something better. Garrison is looking backward, trying to recreate what he lost. We're looking forward, and that fundamental difference is why we'll continue to succeed while he struggles to gain traction. The applause that followed wasn't just supportive, it was determined. These people weren't just employees, they were co-creators of a vision. 3 weeks later, the investment group that had initially backed Garrison withdrew their support. Our industry contacts revealed that after conducting due diligence and speaking with former Horizon employees and clients, they'd developed concerns about Garrison's leadership style and business practices. The final chapter came unexpectedly. Harold Morris, who had indeed found a valuable role on our advisory board, requested a private meeting. "I have information you should know," he said when we met. "Garrison has been approaching Phoenix employees, trying to recruit them. He's focusing on people who worked at Horizon before, promising substantial signing bonuses." I nodded. "We're aware. No one has accepted." Harold looked surprised. "None?" "Not a single person," I confirmed. "But thank you for the warning." He hesitated. "There's more. He contacted me as well." Now I was interested. "And?" "He wanted inside information about your operations, your strategy," he offered. Harold looked embarrassed. "He offered significant compensation." "What did you tell him?" I asked, curious rather than concerned. Harold straightened in his chair. "I told him that I'd made enough mistakes with Horizon by enabling his behavior, and I wouldn't make the same mistake with Phoenix." I smiled. "Thank you for your loyalty, Harold." "It's not about loyalty," he replied. "It's about finally choosing to do the right thing." The next day, I received a hand-delivered envelope. Inside was a brief note from Garrison. "You win. I'm leaving the industry." I didn't respond. There was no need. This had never been about winning or losing for me. It had been about creating something valuable, while proving that success doesn't require sacrificing ethics or dignity. 1 year to the day after the coffee incident, I stood at a podium accepting an industry award for innovation. As I looked out at the audience, I saw faces of people who had been part of my journey: Vivian, Rajan, Zora, Harold, and dozens of others who had chosen to believe in a different kind of leadership. This award recognizes innovation. I began my speech. But the real innovation at Phoenix Energy isn't just in our technology, it's in our approach to business itself. We've proven that listening is more powerful than dictating, that collaboration creates more value than domination, and that sometimes the most impactful person in the room is the one nobody noticed. I paused, looking at the award in my hands. A year ago, someone told me I was nothing but a worthless assistant. Today, I lead a company that's redefining our industry. The difference between then and now isn't that I suddenly gained value, it's that I finally claimed the value I always had. The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for me. It was for everyone who has ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed. It was for everyone who knows they're capable of more than others believe they are. As for Garrison Reed, I heard he moved across the country and opened a small consulting firm. Sometimes I wonder if he ever truly understood what happened, how his biggest mistake wasn't throwing that coffee, but failing to see the potential in the people around him. I never sent him that cleaning bill, by the way. Some debts can't be calculated in dollars and cents, and some victories don't need to be rubbed in to be complete. If you've stayed with my story until now, thank you. Perhaps you've been underestimated too. Perhaps you're biding your time, building something in silence while others dismiss your potential. Remember, being underestimated is a gift if you know how to use it. People who don't see your value won't see you coming until it's too late. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their worth. And leave a comment about a time when someone underestimated you. I read every one of them. Because unlike some people, I understand that every voice matters, especially the ones others try to silence.